Welcome to the Libertarian Institute YouTube and Odyssey channel. Today I am joined by Sheldon Richman, Editor-in-Chief at the Libertarian Institute, and myself, Keith Knight. I am the Managing Editor at the Libertarian Institute. Sheldon, first story we have here is TGIF on liberty and security. The goal is freedom. What do we have here?
Well, I hope people will indulge me. This is my own piece from last week. So not to pat myself on the back, but I wanted to have a little fun, beginning with the famous Franklin quote, Benjamin Franklin, of course. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And I begin with a little bit of a side note about what Franklin really meant. There's an interesting, not quite a debate because it wasn't head to head, but between somebody named Benjamin Wittes, a political scientist or historian, and a woman who's a historical novelist named Layla Del Rey on what Franklin actually meant. But I'll leave that aside since time is short. The question really I wanted to deal with is, are these really two things to be traded off, safety and or security, let's say, and liberty? Is it the idea that as one goes up, the other goes down, and so therefore, as some science fiction writer once put it, the total is always a constant because the gain of one is the loss of the other. This seems very unkosher to me. Roderick Long has pointed out that if freedom means being secure in your life and your property and your sphere where you're free to act, then freedom is security. They can't be traded off. They're really the same things. Looking at it from a more conventional standpoint, we could ask, even if theoretically these are things that could be traded off, who's supposed to do the trade-offs? Who's going to do it, since we're not allowed to do it ourselves? It's always something turned over to the government. That means the politicians and the bureaucrats, but that seems rather convenient. It seems to me the state doesn't provide security. It only provides a false sense of security, which I argue is worse than no security at all. Because if you turn your fate over to the state to say, take care of me, how do you know those people are going to take care of you? Maybe they have other agendas in mind, or maybe they're just incompetent. Maybe they mean well, but are just incompetent, as central authorities, even when they mean well, are incompetent because of various knowledge problems and calculation problems, things like that. So this is a bogus argument. People should not fall for it when they hear that, look, if you want to be safe, like from COVID or the Russians or whatever, we have to give up liberty. Don't buy it. Look at it. Look more closely, and you'll see that it's just a way to justify power.
Perfect example of a false dichotomy. My first one here is from Michael Humer. He wrote a book titled Knowledge, Reality, and Value. He said, look, the news, both national CNN and Fox News, and your local news broadcasts are propaganda. Here are three lenses to look through to realize virtually everything they talk about falls into one of these three categories. This will help you see through propaganda. First, ideological propaganda. If you learn about an issue from a partisan source, for instance, you read about gun control on a gun control advocacy website, or you hear the day's news from a conservative radio show, you will get pretty much 100% propaganda. Facts will be exaggerated, cherry-picked, deceptively phrased, or otherwise misleading. Normally, you will have no way of guessing the specific way in which the information is deceptive, making the information essentially worthless for drawing inferences. Second, sensationalism. Mainstream news sources make more money by getting as many people as possible to watch their shows, read their articles, and so on. To do that, they try to make everything sound as scary, exciting, outrageous, or otherwise dramatic as possible. January 6th being the perfect example of this. Third, laziness. Most people who write for public consumption are lazy and lack expertise about the things they write about. If a story has some technical aspect, example, science news, journalists probably won't understand it, and they may get basic facts backwards. Also, they often just talk to one or a few sources and print whatever those sources say, even if the sources have obvious biases or interests. It's so important to have those in mind when you're watching any news story, just to realize that there's constantly a narrative being created. It also shows that there is no legitimate news, and then there's the stupid people who just have podcasts and they make their own videos. Those people are biased and unreliable, and a lot of times they have a stake in the game. That applies to everyone, including the corporate press. I love Michael Huemer's book. It's titled Knowledge, Reality, and Value, a mostly common sense guide to philosophy. Huemer is also a great libertarian. Sheldon, what is the second one you have for us?
Well, let's see. Let me see which one you're showing.
Alex Epstein.
Oh, Alex Epstein. Yes, I'm a big fan of Alex Epstein. I've talked about energy matters, fossil fuels, climate change, and so forth on past editions of this program. And Epstein, I saw this past week, gave a speech a couple of months ago at a conference of the Young Americas Foundation, where he presented his philosophical approach to energy. Epstein is by training is a philosopher, not a natural scientist, but he makes an excellent case for why he has something to say here. And his point is that we have to ask, first of all, why do we use energy to begin with? The idea is we want human beings to flourish. It's a human standard. And so he points out that much of the warnings and policies increasingly directed at energy seem to be aimed at the idea that human beings should impact the earth and the climate as little as possible, that's the desirable goal. But that ignores a whole bunch of things, like is the impact good or bad? Why assume it has to be bad? There's just no reason to start off with that assumption. If you only look at the side effects of something, which are usually exaggerated or even made up, and never look at the benefits of something, then you're going to get a skewed view of what this thing is. So when the environmental movement and the catastrophists talk about fossil fuel use, they only talk about possibly real but exaggerated and imagined costs, and never mention the benefits. And yet the benefits are extension of lifespans over the last couple hundred years, all over the world, increasing wealth, falling infant mortality, all kinds of good things. All the graphs that show a rise with the beginning of industrialization, all the good things all coincide with the use of fossil fuels. And so I recommend that people look at this essay and then look at this lecture, and then maybe consult his books. His latest one is called Fossil Future, subtitle something like, why we need more use of fossil fuels, not less. And there are billions of people in the world that have very low standards of living who would like to have the kind of standards of living that we have. And yet the Western position is, no, you stay poor. We'll pay you some money. We'll pay your rulers some money. We'll call it reparations or whatever. But you meanwhile stay poor because we can't afford you getting as rich as we are, which of course is total nonsense.
My next one is a short video just to remind people that it's not just misleading things that the press or politicians will say. They do explicitly lie about things that are vitally important.
We all remember the lies that led the U.S. into the Iraq War.
I don't think we ever said, at least I know I didn't say, that there was a direct connection between September the 11th and Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein aids and protects terrorists, including members of Al-Qaeda.
You have said in the past that it was, quote, pretty well confirmed.
No, I never said that.
Okay. I
never
think
said
that is...
No, it's absolutely not. What I said was, it's been pretty well confirmed that he did go to Prague and he did meet with a senior official of the Iraqi intelligence service.
It appears that there were not weapons of mass destruction there.
You said you knew where they were.
I did not.
We know where they are. They're in the area around Tikrit and Baghdad and east, west, south, and north somewhat.
For those of you who's watched that and your blood absolutely boils, check out libertarianinstitute.org. We are having a fundraiser at this time. Purchase a book or check out any one of the mugs or shirts that we have for sale to help us fight against such psychopathy. Finally, Sheldon, you have a Glenn Greenwald. Oh, he has been one of my favorite people lately. I think he has so much courage. I had the chance to shake his hand at Freedom Fest. I was very appreciative. What is this Glenn Greenwald video about?
This video, which is on Rumble but also YouTube, is about the hysteria that is being heaped on Elon Musk, and Twitter in light of his restoring the accounts of all, I don't know if all, but many people who were kicked off under the old ownership of Twitter for various kinds of reasons. I mean, people were kicked off Twitter for saying there are only two sexes. Biologically, there are only two sexes. That could get you kicked off. Or by referring to a man as he, just because that person demanded to be called she. So lots of those people are back now. And as Greenwald shows, and he puts the screenshots up so you can see it, there's this complete hysteria about how, because of Musk, in the words of one writer, this will open the gates of hell. People are going to die. Why? Because by some unexplained process, if people come back on Twitter who were kicked off and begin to just say what they believe, that there's going to be violence in the street. This is going to just incite mass murder on the part of people, which is just hysterical. What can I say? It just makes no sense. It's a fear of free speech, and it's just getting crazier and crazier. It's related to the release the other day by Twitter and Musk of the files that showed how they decided to suppress the Hunter Biden story, and the mainstream media is either ignoring this story, the actual coverage of the files, or downplaying it, saying it's unimportant, when it was the mainstream media, of course, that was pushing social media back in 2020 to suppress the Hunter Biden story, because they didn't want to in any way help or contribute to Biden's defeat. So Greenwald really has the goods on these people. They're just crazy. They're running around like their hair's on fire, and it's just nuts. And they've really shown themselves to be enemies of free speech. It doesn't mean everybody who talks, who gives their opinion on Twitter, is making any kind of sense or is a good person. It doesn't mean any of that. But the idea that the social media people ought to be determining what's true, what's not true, what's worth saying, what's not worth saying, is just crazy. Now, the private company is true, and Greenwald doesn't make enough of that, but that doesn't change the fact that it's crazy to think that the Twitter can hire people who have this insight into what's true and ought to be telling us what we can hear.
My final topic is a book published in 1995 titled The Vision of the Anointed, Self-Congratulations as a Basis for Social Policy by Thomas Sowell. I like what he says here. He says, the vision of the anointed is not simply a vision of the world and its functioning in a causal sense, but it's also a vision of themselves and of their moral role in the world. It is a vision of differential rectitude. It is not a vision of a tragedy of the human condition. Problems exist because others are not as wise or as virtuous as the anointed. He says that there's 4 key elements to their worldview, which you will see again and again. He wrote this in 1995. So he says, when you see these 4, you're about to be scammed. Number 1, assertions of a great danger to the whole of society, a danger to which the masses are oblivious. 2, an urgent need for action to avert impending catastrophe. 3, a need for government to drastically curtail the dangerous behavior of the many in response to the prescient conclusions of a few. Finally, a disdainful dismissal of arguments to the contrary as either uninformed, irresponsible, or motivated by unworthy purposes. A perfect example is if we let people speak freely on Twitter, well, people are going to die, as opposed to giving some people the power of censorship and nuclear weapons and tanks has never caused anyone else to die. Of course, a standard for us they never hold themselves to. If you like what we're talking about here, check out libertarianinstitute.org. As I said, we are currently having a fundraiser. We have a number of books. Sheldon's book is titled What Social Animals Owe to Each Other. I love it because each chapter is 2 to 3 pages long, and it's a collection of research that he's done for years. We have 5 podcasts. We have archives from the Oklahoma City bombing, the archives of Will Grigg, the gentleman whose position I now am grateful to hold as managing editor, your source for news, journalism, education, and activism from a libertarian perspective. Sheldon, tell us something that we could find at the Libertarian Institute that you think is really valuable for people to check out.
Well, gosh, it's such a variety of topics. If you want to keep up on what's going on with the U.S. intervention in the Ukrainian conflict with Russia, you'll find plenty of stuff there. You'll find comments on cultural issues. My article this week, which comes out every Friday, is going to be dealing with the national conservatives who criticize libertarianism for allegedly holding the view that liberty is the only value and that's all we need, and problems would be solved if only liberty is enough to solve all problems. And I show that that's just a straw man. It's bogus, and the conservatives are just trying to justify a muscular state.
Thanks to everyone for watching the Libertarian Institute YouTube Odyssey and to the podcatching listening audience. Sheldon Richman, thanks so much for your time.
Appreciate it. Nice to be with you.